Since life first appeared on Earth, extinction has walked alongside it. The total disappearance of a species, genus, or even larger groups has been happening for millions of years. And just like life has become incredibly varied, the reasons behind these extinctions have also been diverse. Some of the more familiar explanations include asteroids ignoring cosmic traffic rules, volcanoes getting far too intense, and natural shifts in climate. In other words, for a large part of history, species that went extinct were often battling the raw forces of nature, rather than fighting other living beings. That isn't to say animal-on-animal extinction never happened. It did, but generally, on small scales and usually in ways that didn't make headlines across continents. However, there was a period not too far back in geological time when a massive wave of migrations and competitions took place, sparking multiple extinctions and fundamentally reshaping ecosystems. This enormous event has been dubbed the Great American Biotic Interchange, often abbreviated as GABI. While it might not sound like a blockbuster story at first glance, in reality, it was an ecological roller coaster with dramatic consequences. If you walk through much of North America today, particularly the United States, you might encounter opossums, creatures that have become a staple of urban wildlife. The twist? These animals are not originally from North America, their roots lie in South America. It's equally striking that you won't see camels, llamas, or any camelids roaming freely in the US, which would seem natural if they were native. Yet in South America, animals like alpacas are ubiquitous and iconic, closely tied to certain regions and cultures. Ironically, camels actually originated in North America. These examples are possums up north and camels absent from their original home are clear evidence that the Great American Biotic Interchange truly occurred. To fully understand how this unfolded, we need to rewind the clock. Around 3 million years ago, during the late Pliocene, North and South America were still isolated from one another, as they had been for roughly 100 million years. This long-term separation allowed each continent to develop completely unique ecosystems. Traveling to either continent at that time would have been an entirely different experience. South America, in particular, was like an ecological time capsule, an island continent with many endemic species found nowhere else. Its wildlife included extraordinary marsupials, xenophons like giant ground sloths, and a diverse array of other animals with no parallels in the north. Among the more famous examples were enormous ground sloths, gigantic armadillos, and fierce flightless birds that dominated the landscape. North America, by contrast, had a very different assortment of species: camelids, horses, deer, and large carnivores like jaguars, cougars, bears, lions, and saber-toothed cats. The two continents had evolved in virtual isolation, with life histories that could not have been more separate. Yet small signs of future interaction had already begun. Skirmishes, so to speak, had occurred as far back as 40 million years ago. Some animals had already managed to reach South America via oceanic dispersal, primarily coming from Africa rather than North America. These included rodents, bats, and tortoises, which island hopped or rafted their way across oceans to new lands. Even these early arrivals had noticeable effects, often outcompeting smaller South American species and diversifying into forms such as capybaras, New World porcupines, and New World monkeys. Then, around 7.3 million years ago, North American procyonids, the ancestors of modern raccoons, managed their first crossing. These early carnivorous placental mammals represented a significant ecological incursion. Their diet included eggs of native animals, which may have indirectly led to the decline of South America's largest predators at the time. Shortly after, skunks and sigma-dontini rodents followed, further altering ecosystems. Some South American species, including ground sloths and terror birds, even made limited moves northward before the full interchange. The full-scale interchange began when tectonic activity pushed up the Isthmus of Panama around 2.7 million years ago. This created a continuous land bridge between North and South America, allowing animals to move freely between the continents for the first time in millions of years. With this new corridor, a massive migration of species occurred in both directions. Initially, movement was relatively balanced. North American camelids, deer, horses, and proboscideans moved south, while South America sent giant armadillos, ground sloths, and terror birds north. Predators such as cougars, jaguars, saber-toothed cats, and bears advanced southward, setting the stage for unprecedented ecological interactions. Imagine standing on the Isthmus of Panama during this period. The narrow strip of land would have been a surreal meeting point, where animals from both continents encountered one another for the first time. Massive flightless birds confronted saber-toothed predators. Giant armadillos came face to face with agile cats, and huge ground sloths towered over the landscape. At first, the balance remained relatively neutral, with species migrating and exploring. But the tide soon shifted in favor of North American invaders. South American animals moving north confronted significant obstacles. Ecological niches they had dominated in the south were already filled, and they struggled to compete with North American species, terror birds, once dominant apex predators in South America, only managed limited success in the southern United States. Similarly, giant armadillos established only a restricted presence, and the range of other species like ground sloths was constrained by competition. Some South American species did succeed, however. Ground sloths were particularly notable, with lineages establishing themselves in North America and some even reaching Alaska, with the potential to cross into Asia via the Bering Strait. Their large size and ability to stand upright to reach high vegetation gave them distinct advantages. Small animals, including opossums, armadillos, and porcupines, thrived due to adaptability, dietary flexibility, and defensive behaviors like armor and quills. A few birds and reptiles also managed to gain a foothold in the north. Despite these individual successes, North American species clearly dominated the interchange. Their predators such as bears, dire wolves, and saber-toothed cats completely reshaped the predator guild in South America. The influx of North American herbivores displaced native species, while some South American ungulates, known as SANUs, experienced massive declines. Over millions of years, many of these large mammals were replaced or driven to extinction. Still, some megaherbivores, like ground sloths and armored xenophans, survived thanks to their size and defensive traits. Small marsupials, meanwhile, proved surprisingly resilient, persisting in large numbers despite the upheaval. Geography was a major factor in the outcome of the interchange. North American animals migrating south had already adapted to tropical climates, whereas South American animals moving north faced abrupt changes in temperature and dryness, particularly in regions like the Trans-Mexican Volcanic Belt. Moreover, South America's long-term isolation had left its animals unaccustomed to intense competition, whereas North American species had evolved in environments connected to Eurasia and Africa, giving them greater exposure to threats and competitors. North America's larger land area also provided advantages in survival and diversification. Ultimately, North American species emerged as the winners of the Great American Biotic Interchange, fundamentally reshaping South American ecosystems. By the time humans arrived around 23,000 years ago in North America and 20,000 years ago in South America, the stage was set for the ecosystems we would eventually encounter, while many species that had thrived during the interchange later disappeared. These extinctions were largely associated with the late Pleistocene megafaunal decline, driven by human hunting and environmental change. Other hypotheses, including global disease, asteroid impacts, and fluctuations in Earth's magnetic field, exist but remain less widely supported. What stands out about this episode is that it illustrates extinction driven largely by the presence of other animals rather than environmental catastrophe. It underscores the power of interspecies competition and serves as a cautionary tale against introducing non-native species, which can have profound and lasting ecological consequences.